Hello, everyone. Just going to give a minute or so to allow people to join. Thank you for being with us today. All right, we still have people joining, so probably another minute. All right, welcome everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started shortly here, but just giving it a little bit more time for more people to join. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get us started just because we have a lot on the agenda today that we want to get through. Greetings, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Hilary Navarro, and I'm the Chief Communications and Engagement Officer here at Verra, and I'm going to be keeping us on time and keeping us on track as we work through our agenda today. So this is Verra's first stakeholder update of 2025. We are going to continue to hold these quarterly throughout 2025. And we already have our future dates set and scheduled at the end of April, at the end of July, and at the end of October. So if you are interested, you can register now at verra.org/events. Before we get started, I do want to confirm that the recording of this webinar, the slide deck of this webinar, and all of the links that we're going to be mentioning today in the various presentations will be shared via email with everyone who registered for this webinar after the webinar concludes. So no need to take frantic notes or worry that you missed something. We will be sharing all of the details post-webinar. All right, so let's go ahead and get started with our agenda. We have a full agenda for you today on the latest and the greatest from Verra. First, we're going to kick things off with a message from our CEO, Mandy Rambarros. After that, we'll give you the latest updates on Verra's risk-based approach to project reviews, followed by a broader digitalization update. Then we'll give 2 more programmatic updates on RED and on CORSIA label guidance. And then we'll end with a quick update on client relations before we close with our standard open Q&A. So just as a note of housekeeping, you can type your questions into the Q&A module at the bottom of your Zoom console at any time during the presentation today, and we will get to those as we're able at the end during the Q&A session. Just a reminder that we will not be raising hands. We will not be answering raised hands. So you can raise your hands, but because of the number of people we have on the call, we won't be able to answer it. So if you have a question, we really encourage you to put that question into the Q&A module. All right, so with that, I am going to hand the floor over to Mandy for the CEO update.
Great, thank you so much, Hilary. And it's great to see your names, at least, so many of you with us here today. As I settled into this role as the CEO of Verra, I think I've stopped counting, but it's now 5 months. One of the things I've actually enjoyed most is the engagements we've had with stakeholders. So a number of you that I see on the list, a number of people that are not on the list, have reached out to engage, and we've been having really constructive discussions. They're not all easy. Some of them are really difficult discussions or difficult conversations, but it's all towards improving and enhancing Verra, and I really do appreciate that. and I welcome that. And also, in improving and enhancing the voluntary carbon market, which is the common denominator that I've found in all of the conversations I've had. So even the difficult conversations, what I've really appreciated is that we all have a common denominator, and that is being purpose-driven around getting climate financing to the right places where it's required, and meeting the needs of communities there. And all of us are gearing towards this high integrity voluntary carbon market, which is really, really heartwarming when I've had these discussions. So credibility, trust, and impact are earned through these honest, constructive engagements, and it does lead to continuous improvements of ourselves as well, which you'll hear throughout this morning. So thank you for reaching out. Thank you for being willing to have those very direct and honest conversations with us. And thank you for being with us here today. And I want to encourage you to continue to reach out, continue to ask to meet with us, and more than happy to engage with you in that way. So as Hillary mentioned, we do have a full agenda, but that will ensure that you're updated on the latest developments. There's a couple of things that happened in the last couple of months that we want to update you on. But I would like to kick off today with a story. And this is a story of Mayra, who you see on the screen from Guatemala. Mayra is the first person from her indigenous community to attend college, which is a milestone that almost didn't happen. At just 14 years old, Mayra was arranged to marry a 21-year-old man, which is a practice in the village she comes from. And so her future seemed pretty predetermined. But Mayra learned about her rights through the programs run by Fandeco, a VCM project proponent. And with courage and determination, she challenged this decision, and she challenged this predetermined future for her. She took up her case to the justice system, and in a landmark ruling, the judge upheld her right to continue her education. Today, she's pursuing a degree in forest engineering with a vision of giving girls like her more options in choosing their life path. This transformation was made possible by the support that Fandeco provides to communities through scholarships, through health services, and technical assistance, funded largely by the VCS project in Guatemala. And honestly, all the conversations we have, all the discussions we have where we butt heads and in a good constructive way, at the end of the day, this is why we all do what we do. We're enabling projects worldwide to channel financing where it's needed the most. We help individuals like Mayra forge their own paths and inspire their communities. Fandeco's Healthy and Empowered Women and Girls program continues to provide sexual and reproductive health services, scholarships, leadership development, economic opportunities to hundreds of girls and young women every year. This photo was taken this week, and right now we have a team in Guatemala capturing the story. And we are aiming to publish the Fandeco Guatemala Conservation Coast story, which is Mayra's story, by the end of February. So please do look out for that. Our impact stories on our website have had a lot of positive feedback, and we aim to continue to do those, because these kinds of stories serves as a reminder of the meaningful impact we're making together. So thank you to everybody on this call. Thank you for everything that you do. It is literally changing lives. And what better than to have a job that is so purpose-driven? And I say this over and over. I think people are getting bored of me saying this, but we can never say it enough. And that is, the most successful projects in the carbon market do not just reduce emissions. They contribute to addressing systemic issues that so many communities around the world face. Things like providing clean energy, things that a lot of us just take for granted, right? Providing clean energy to underserved communities, restoring critical ecosystems, and creating pathways for sustainable livelihoods. By 2025, we expect to see greater emphasis on these core benefits. We have new and revised methodologies which will enable us to certify outcomes such as biodiversity protection, plastic waste removal, and improved climate resilience. This broader focus positions the carbon market, which we already know is an absolutely critical and vital tool for carbon financing, but it also positions it as a tool for solving these interconnected crises of our time. So thank you again for everybody for being with us, and the invitation is open to please reach out for engagements that you would like to have. Hillary, I'd like to hand over to you again.
Great. Thank you so much, Mandy. And as Mandy mentioned, and for those of you who may not know, we did start this impact campaign last year to showcase all of these amazing, important stories of the impact that the VCM projects are having. And throughout this year, we are going to continue working with our amazing project proponents and telling these incredible stories to try and get the good news stories out there about the work that's happening within the VCM. And I do want to encourage for any project proponents that are on the line today, if you have a success story that you want to share, you want to collaborate with us on, please email us at info@verra.org, and we'll be happy to get back to you. And the URL at the bottom of the screen is where you can go to see more of our case studies if you're interested, with many more to come. So with that, I'm going to hand the floor over to Justin Wheeler. He's our Chief of Program Management, and he's going to be giving an update on Verra's effort to increase efficiency and to speed up our project review process to facilitate the development and implementation of more amazing projects. Justin, over to you.
Thanks, Hillary. Thanks, Mandy. Hi, everyone. As Hillary said, I'm just going to give a quick update on the implementation of our new risk-based approach to project reviews, some of the initial results, some of the lessons learned, and our next steps. So as a reminder, we started this process last November. I spoke about it at the last webinar. The basic idea is optimizing our project review process. So moving from reviewing every project request in the exact same way to assessing the risk of each request and then applying our review resources strategically to those areas of greatest risk so that we can efficiently ensure the quality of all the projects and credits that we're certifying under Verra's standards. These Verra checks, as a reminder, are a supplement. This is not the only part of quality assurance. This is the last stage. So it comes after all the important work that the project proponents are doing themselves, as well as the independent auditors, the validation verification bodies that are reviewing all of these documents and requests before they come to Verra. We introduced this updated approach in our last webinar. We've also posted some frequently asked questions and the answers to those on our website, so I'll put that link in the email that comes out to you all after this webinar. The webinar that we did in the fall, we committed to publicly reporting on our progress and to hitting our existing service level agreements, or SLAs, by the end of 2024, and then revisiting those SLAs in 2025 to identify areas where we can further tighten up, continuously improving our review process and the tools that we're using to maximize the efficiency, effectiveness, and stakeholder experience of our review processes. So while the risk-based approach is a new terminology, this is the new normal for project reviews. This is the approach we're taking from now on. We'll continue to optimize within that. It's not a one-time implementation. It's an ongoing new approach to how Verra does its certification functions. So we hope that those of you that have been interacting with the project review process have already experienced some significant improvements. We acknowledge that we still have room to improve, and we're committed to that ongoing work. So turning to results, we're still working through a mix of cases. Obviously, the world didn't stop in November and then restart. We had a whole bunch of cases or requests that were submitted prior to this new approach. So we have a mix of those older requests and new requests that have come in since we implemented this new system. So the new approach will benefit both types of cases, but when I speak about results and data, we draw a dividing line between requests received before November 1st and requests received after November 1st, just to highlight some of those impacts and results. So that's important to know for the data. But the other thing is, please rest assured, we're not prioritizing those new cases over the old cases. We're working on both. We're committed to processing all the requests that are in front of us as quickly as possible, but also ensuring the quality for both those older and the newer requests. The split is just for the purposes of data and explaining results. So caveats aside, let's turn to some of the numbers. Since November 1st, we've received 487 new requests. We've closed 172 of those. All of those requests that were received and closed since November 1st were within the SLAs, so 100% achievement of service level agreements for those new requests. We note, of course, this is generally the lower risk types of cases that come in and are closed that quickly. So it's a positive result, but it's not a surprising outcome. All currently open cases received after November 1st are also within their total SLAs, although some are currently behind their stage. So the graph that you see there is a cool way of showing that snapshot. So this is as of Monday, about 73% of cases are within their stage SLA as well as within the totals. And then the remaining 27% are outside of their stage SLA. Those are in the front, mainly in the front end stages, either registry review or in the queue, still well within the totals, and we will aim to catch up and keep those within the total SLAs as we complete those cases. On the next slide, you see that overall, we have reduced the VCS program project review times by up to 35%, depending on the request type. You see there's a couple different splits there on the slide. And the current average time the current average time of VCS program registration and verification, or verification request project spends with Verra, so the average across all those request types in the fourth quarter of 2024 was 43 days to completion, and that compares to the previous 3 quarters, which was 54 days, so already a 21% improvement as the result of the new risk-based approach, and we expect to see further improvements. We tend to log the data once we complete a case, so for those legacy cases that were opened well before the new approach, they show up as a snapshot in December if we closed it in December, even though most of the processes were under the old approach. For those cases that were submitted before November 1st, we do still have 348 that are in various stages of the review process. 46% of those, so just under half, are outside of the service level agreements. So that's why we implemented this new approach, is to tighten up those numbers. And that's the ones that are on Verra's desk. There's also some cases that are with the project proponent or the VVB awaiting a response. So where we've had a finding and sent it back and are awaiting a response. So we don't assign SLAs to those cases because it's out of our hands. We assign the SLAs to the stages of the work that Verra controls. Since November 1st, we have closed 210 regular legacy cases, so those cases that came in before November 1st. The average time those spent with Verra was 81 days. So just to give you a comparator, that 43 versus 54, 81 was the time for the legacy cases. So we're almost a 50% improvement under the RBA for that. Now to turn to some sticking points. We want to be honest about some of the ongoing challenges and share what we're doing to address these. So despite the good news at the headline level, this is challenging work. We have further improvements to make. So I want to share a few of the learnings and what we're doing about them. Most of the open cases, as you saw in that earlier graph, outside of their stage service level, are natural climate solutions cases. And there's a few reasons behind this. The risk-based approach has still only been partially implemented for those project types. That's because they're generally more complex. So finalizing the metrics that we're using for assessing the risk to those cases, and more importantly, finalizing the targeted checks that we're going to apply to make sure we're managing those risks, took a little bit longer. So we're just now fully moving into implementing those updated checklists. So they've benefited from some of the process simplifications, but some further improvements should be really showing up in the next month or two. So that's challenge number 1 on the left-hand side there. In the middle of the screen, you see that currently the most significant area where projects are not meeting their service level agreements is where they're in the queue or waiting for a technical reviewer. So 11% of the cases not meeting the SLA are currently in that stage in queue. And we have some new tools coming, some automated review tools and some updated approaches to how we're doing that queuing system to make sure that those cases are moving. One important thing to note is if a project is in the queue, that's not necessarily a bad thing. The reason why we have a queue is so that a reviewer can take one review, focus on it, complete it, get it off their desk, and then pick up the next one. So instead of a reviewer juggling 10 or 20 reviews at once and just trying to keep everybody happy and then slowing everything down, we've moved much more to a pick one thing up, get it done quickly and well, and then pick the next thing up. So there is a bit of growth in the queue. I know that feels frustrating while you're in the queue, but overall that is improving our process times. The third point I wanted to make is on anti-money laundering and legal compliance checks. This is obviously critical. This is part of our legal obligation to make sure that we're meeting those laws. So we have introduced some improvements to this part of the process, which included broadening the checks that we're applying and making sure that we're checking all entities involved in a project as a proponent, as opposed to just the entity that's listed on the registry. So that involved some new training, some new data management work, and just some learning and updating of processes. So that did delay those front-end stages of the process. That shows up in the registry check stage. We've already solved most of those issues, and we have some further automation and exciting solutions coming to make sure that work is happening and happening well, because it's critical, but that it's not slowing down the overall review process. So one of the things we've done there is, instead of making that a stage gate that always happens first before the technical review, is we've allowed it to happen in parallel in some cases, so that the technical reviewer can start doing their work while we're still completing those AML and legal compliance checks. On the next slide, a couple other improvements and the vision. So one big thing we've seen, and where we've seen a lot of improvements, is in the pipeline listing. We had a little bit of a contradictory logic in our system. So when a project is in the pipeline, that just means that it's getting ready. It hasn't yet completed validation. The auditor hasn't completed its work, but a lot of good work is happening on the ground. They want to be on the registry. That's important for transparency. Before, we were kind of getting ahead of the VVBs and doing a bunch of checks that ultimately were duplicative with what a VVB would do. So we've stopped doing that. We've significantly streamlined the pipeline listing stage. We're 100% meeting our SLAs there, and we expect to tighten those SLAs in the near future. The important caveat that goes along with that, and important information for stakeholders to know, is when you see a project in pipeline listing, that's important information, but it's unreviewed information until that project has completed validation and registration. So just because it's on the registry in pipeline listing as under development or under validation, that doesn't mean that it's necessarily going to be approved. It's there for transparency so that you can see what's coming and see the good work that project proponents are doing on the ground. So a couple other things we're doing, we're refining our review stages and checks due to the implementation of the risk-based approach and to feedback we've received from stakeholders. So please do keep that feedback coming. That really helps us. We're revisiting the stage service level agreements so that they match the time the different review rounds and project types actually take now that we're in this new approach. So what you'll likely see, we haven't finalized the numbers, is the pipeline stage that I just talked about. We'll probably tighten that up, potentially tighten up the verification stage. We're applying a lot more effort at the registration stage because that's the most important time to check some of the eligibility conditions. So that's probably the one where you'll see the least compression of SLAs and project review times. But the purpose of that is to then save work when those same projects come back with a verification request. Another thing that's happening in parallel to all this work that we're doing is the VVB performance management program is up and running. So this program and the scorecards is intended to really drive improved performance upstream. So ensure that those VVBs are doing a really good job, and to give them feedback on the issues that we're observing so that they can get better, and therefore we will have fewer findings, fewer issues that we're addressing at the project review stage, because we'll see higher quality projects coming in at the front end. So the team, our audit and accreditation team, is now producing the scorecards from the 2024 year. Those will be going out to VVBs shortly, and we have regular webinars with our VVBs. We've had great feedback and cooperation on looking to improve that part of the system. And then the final thing I want to mention is digital review tools. So we have a lot of hope, and we've seen a lot of progress already, that getting to digitization, so digital meths, data as data, and then our own internal digital review tools will significantly improve both the stakeholder experience and our processing times. We're just now in the final testing of some exciting new tools and integrating those into our team. And Joe's going to speak a little bit more about what's coming on digitization more generally. So I'd just like to close with a little bit of reflection on 2024, because it was a big year for us. We closed over 1,100 cases between January and December 2024. This includes 88% of the cases that were opened before 2024. So we did have a backlog coming into last year, and we've significantly reduced that backlog. 304 new projects were registered, so a significant increase, bringing the total number of registered projects to almost 2,400. You can see those headline numbers on the registry. We approved over 182 million VCUs for issuance, and 105 of those were issued and are in the market or even retired already from 454 projects. So still a significant volume of activity happening in our programs, and that's real impact on the ground, like that example that Mandy spoke about. VCU holders also retired a lot of credits, so 115 million VCUs were retired from 928 different projects. So a huge diversity of credits continue to be transacted and retired from across the world and across sectors. On our VVB performance management program, we conducted 15 performance observation audits. So this is where Verra staff actually go and ride along with a VVB, observe what they're doing in the field. That's an important part of ensuring the quality and consistency of expectations for those VVBs. And one of the most important findings from that work was the importance of VVBs employing audit techniques that ensure impartiality of stakeholder interviews. So we have some further follow-up training and program updates, potentially even related to those stakeholder interactions, part of what the VVBs are doing. That's critical for the safeguards side of the VCS and their other Verra standards. We also conducted 8 VVB training sessions last year as part of that performance management program. So the team's been busy. We continue to be busy. We look forward to working with you. Please continue to give us our feedback. And now I'll hand it over to Joe to speak about the digitization work.
Great. Well, thanks, Justin. And boy, those are some fantastic accomplishments. So congratulations to you and your team. Really excited to be here and see everybody today. Justin was able to provide an overview of the RBA process, including a preview of how technology will help to enable a more efficient review process. And I'll be touching on that more a little bit later. So following the announcement of our first 8 digitized methodologies during our last discussion, I'm excited to share a broader digitization update today. So you've heard a lot about Verra's Project Hub, and so I thought a visualization would help to provide additional context on how it fits within the overall project lifecycle. So as you can see over there on the left, the project starts with an initiation of a project, and the diagram includes selecting a Verra program and an associated methodology. We are hearing from many project proponents, developers, and other stakeholders that they're leveraging technology more broadly, including the capture of DMRV-related data, and want the ability to integrate data with Verra data APIs. Well, we have heard you and we've listened. And as illustrated in the diagram, the Verra Project Hub is API first. As a cloud and microservices-based architecture, the underlying components are in place to continue evolving and scaling the platform for now and into the future. And I'll say that our digitization journey is well underway. So in the middle there is our Project Hub. And core is we've made significant progress in automating previously manual forms, digitizing templates, and developing the capabilities required to digitally capture project description documentation including the monitoring, validation, and verification report data, which will provide increased data transparency and integrity and more streamlined digital tools and techniques. VVV workflows will be embedded into our project review tools that Justin alluded to, and our goal is to begin to roll out these capabilities later in Q1. On the right side of the model, DMRV data and algorithm decision-making and our own internally developed long-term monitoring systems in support of nature-based projects will operationalize our commitment to monitoring permanence and provide the ability to ensure projects adhere to expected outcomes. This will further ensure project integrity over the course of expected monitoring periods. We expect to launch our long-term monitoring alerting functionality in the coming months, which will bring attention to unexpected forest loss as one example. And we're really excited about that. So since our last meeting, we have launched an additional 5 methodologies in digitized format. So as you can see there in the newly released areas, 2 are VCS program-related methodologies, and 3 are CDM methodologies. We are working to digitize many others, and we'll post updates on our website as they become available. The first step in enabling DMRV functionality is to digitize the methodology first. So if you have registered a Verra account, have a project under consideration, and want to leverage DMRV, let us know. So digital monitoring, reporting, and verification, DMRV. This technology has the potential to revolutionize the way the voluntary carbon market operates by providing greater transparency, efficiency, and accountability. And while it is widely discussed, it's helpful to provide some clarity around what DMRV actually implies. So it first starts with the data and leveraging digital measurement platforms such as sensors, satellites, and remote sensing to collect and analyze the data. Data collection analysis processes are automated to improve efficiency, which can result in faster reporting and decision-making. And outcomes include greater transparency and accountability by making data available in a more accessible format to improve trust and increase the likelihood of achieving our climate goals. Over time, DMRV can also be more cost-effective as it reduces the need for manual data collection and analysis. And as shown there on the left, we've initiated a number of pilots with multiple parties across multiple methodologies with a goal to productionalize and certify a number of DMRV platforms in 2025. So we have ambitious goals this year, and additional features and enhancements include a digital-first approach to new methodology updates and programs, including the introduction of the Nature Framework via our digital project submission tool that will be available in the April timeframe. We are also using AI to digitize PDF documents to unlock data insights and enable a Project Hub data API for project and account level data, which I know many of you are interested in. And a VVV portal will provide deeper project status insights beyond the project tracker, and our project location review tool will provide project boundary verification to minimize project overlap exposure. These are just a few examples of our work in progress, and we look forward to sharing additional insights in future meetings. Most importantly, and as Justin alluded to, we are here to help you. So to gain access to the Project Hub or to report technical issues, offer feedback for improvement, or frankly, tell us that you love what we're doing, feel free to email the hubsupport@verra.org. You can track our progress on digital methodology updates at the verra.org website. There's a link there to see methodologies, including digitized methodologies. And we have a number of useful links that can help you get started on the Project Hub, and we'll share those links following our meeting. Thanks so much for your time, and I hope you are as excited as we are about our digital journey. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Naomi Swickworth, our Verra's Senior Advisor for Forest Carbon, to provide an update on RED.
Thank you, everyone. If we can move to the next slide. So our RED work has hit two major milestones over the last quarter. The first of those is the first release of data under our new RED methodology, VM48. So for those of you that are unfamiliar, VM48 is our new RED approach. Within it, at the moment, we include avoided unplanned deforestation, and that is being accounted in a more top-down way than historically. So we are gathering activity data and developing deforestation risk maps in order to deliver allocated risk to projects, which essentially gives the baseline to projects in the unplanned deforestation area. So we have released provisional open access activity data and allocated risk maps now for 4 states in Brazil, including Amazonas, Mato Grosso, Pará, and Rondônia. We are about to release a number of other countries and jurisdictions, so they are coming very soon for Cambodia, Colombia, and a number of others that you see on the screen. We have released at the moment provisional data. It is undergoing its final review for the risk maps, and then it will be finalized. And when that's finalized, projects will be able to request their data through the project hub. We did just run a webinar on this, so feel free to look up that webinar. The recording and information is on our website for more information. Next slide. The other big update that we have in RED is the approval of a number of our methodologies by ICVCM and CORSIA. So the ICVCM has approved Verra methodologies VM48 for RED, JNR, and VM47 for ARR. They are now also reviewing VM45, which is our latest IFM methodology. And also just to mention, as a bit of a transition to our next speaker, these are also eligible under CORSIA where they are either outside RED countries, small scale, or nested in JNR programs. So some big steps there in terms of approvals and endorsement that these methodologies now meet the highest current standards of integrity. I will then hand it to Andrew to talk more about CORSIA.
Great, thank you very much, Naomi. What I want to share with you today is highlights from our CORSIA label guidance, which we've just released. Many of you will be familiar with the CORSIA program. It's a program which has been established by the International Civil Aviation Organization, ICAO, to supplement the decarbonization efforts of the aviation sector. So in essence, the program allows airlines to invest in further climate action and then to use the resulting credits to hold their emissions at 2020 levels. Now, our VCS program has been eligible for the CORSIA pilot phase for many years already. This ran from 2021 to 2023. And then late last year, ICAO extended this eligibility to CORSIA's first phase, what they call the first phase, of course, the first after the pilot, which runs from 2024 to 2026. Our new CORSIA label guidance, the newly released document, gives an overview of what projects are eligible for use under CORSIA, and also how you can get the labels attached to your VCUs in the Verra registry. Now, you can see on the right-hand side of the slide that ICAO's definition of projects eligible for CORSIA often reflects a concern that AFOLO projects may interact with RED activities in those countries. Now, AFOLO, of course, refers to the agriculture, forestry, and other land use sector. So with specific regard to what is eligible, what you see is that all projects which are not AFOLO projects are eligible for CORSIA. So this is the general rule which is followed. When it does come to AFOLO projects, they are eligible in certain cases. So firstly, if they are outside of RED plus countries, then they are eligible. Also, if they are in RED plus countries but are small enough, or if they're based on methodologies which don't overlap with RED plus activities, then they are eligible. And ICAO has a list of, I think, 11 methodologies from the VCS where projects are eligible for CORSIA. Now, what I've described in these eligibility requirements so far apply to credits used both for the pilot phase and for the first phase of CORSIA. There are some exclusions which do apply for the first phase, 2024 to 26. So one exclusion is large-scale electricity generation from renewable energy. This is an exclusion which applies across all the crediting programs under CORSIA. ACARU has also not granted eligibility for cookstove projects that are still using methodologies from the CDM or are using our older VCS methodologies for cookstoves. Now, here, this is an area where we don't think this is consistent with how other crediting programs have been treated, and we are trying to resolve this with ACARU. However, what is important is that projects that are using our latest cookstove methodology, VM50, these are eligible under CORSIA. And last exclusion here, any projects which are using carbon capture and storage are not yet eligible under CORSIA. ACARU has said that they have not yet had sufficient time to consider these methodologies, so that is something we are expecting will be considered further this year and hopefully will change. So another aspect of the new guidance is that it shows how we use our Article 6 labels to ensure there's no double claiming on emission reductions and removals between the airline and the host country. And so I'll say a bit more on this slide now. The slide sets out our range of credit labels that are relevant to CORSIA. So if we look first of all at the middle column, which is the one on the pilot phase, you can see that the eligible years in which the mitigation occurred, and we call these vintage years, has been extended until 2023. So previously it was up to 2020 for the pilot phase. However, and this is an important point, any mitigation that occurs from 2021 onwards is happening in the time of the Paris Agreement. So we need to ensure that the host countries don't also claim the mitigation towards their NDCs. So these are the general no double claiming provisions. To do this, host countries give their authorization that the mitigation outcomes can be used towards CORSIA, and at the same time, they commit to making corresponding adjustments in their own emissions accounting when they determine whether or not they have achieved their emissions targets within their NDCs, their nationally determined contributions. In this case, we would then assign an Article 6 label to the VCUs in the Verra registry. So an Article 6 label is not needed for mitigation which occurs before 2021, but it is needed for mitigation that happens from 2021 onwards. If this authorization has not yet been received, however, you can also request a CORSIA scope label. Now, this CORSIA scope label signals that the VCU is from a project that fits the scope of project activities that ACARU has made eligible, but the VCU is not actually eligible to be retired for CORSIA until an Article 6 label is added and until we convert the CORSIA scope label into a CORSIA eligible label. So that's the general principle of how it works. And you can see the same pattern in the right-hand column for the first phase of CORSIA. Now, here, only vintage years from 2021 are allowed anyway, so all VCUs need to have the Article 6 label in order to be fully eligible for CORSIA use. So on the next slide and the last slide for this part, we also have provisions within the CORSIA label guidance document to protect against what we think will be rare cases where a country may not actually do its corresponding adjustment. Now, this may happen, for example, if the host country changes its authorization, in which case Verra will remove the Article 6 label from the affected VCUs. Now, the best assurance that can be given against double claiming is, of course, if you can show to us evidence that the corresponding adjustment has already been applied. That's not normally going to be the case, though. Normally, a CORSIA eligible label will be sought before the corresponding adjustment has actually been done by the host country. So here we require a legal document in the form of what we're calling an accounting representation, in which the signatory commits to cancel an equivalent number of credits if VCUs with an Article 6, without an Article 6 label, without an Article 6 label are retired for CORSIA. We also require a certificate of insurance to say that the signatory is covered if such a cancellation is needed. So the insurance is ensuring the robustness of the system, that the signatory to the accounting representation is actually going to be in a position to do the cancellation which is required. Now, we are open to receiving these accounting representations and also insurance certificates from any entities which were involved in the credit purchase. So we're not determining which of those entities should give us the accounting representation. We're leaving that instead to be something which is negotiated amongst the different actors within the arrangement. Now, we will soon be releasing further documentation relating to how the accounting representation will work. This will include a document template, and it'll also include a list of requirements that insurance policies must meet in order for us to accept them. We expect these to be released in March, so that we can then begin the assessment of insurance policies against the requirements and then publish a list of approved insurance providers and insurance policies. So that's our update on CORSIA, and back to you now, Hilary.
Great. Thank you, Andrew. So we're getting really close to the Q&A. We've already started answering some of the questions in writing. But before we get to the live Q&A, just a really quick update on client relations. So as I mentioned in our last stakeholder webinar, there was a new department created specifically to focus on communications and on stakeholder relations, and that happened last December. And so I'm just going to give you a couple updates of what we've done since then. Since we've come together, really our first priority was streamlining our email query management. We get a lot of queries to a lot of different inboxes at Verra every day, and we wanted to make sure that those were being answered in a fast fashion. So our team is now managing all of the emails that we receive to info@verra.org and to secretariat@verra.org. So for reference, we receive around 130 queries a day to those combined inboxes. I'm happy to report that those inboxes are now clear. We're hitting our 3-day SLA on responses for 100% of those emails. Obviously, for the very complicated, very technical queries, it may take us longer than 3 days to get you a final response, but we will begin working on a response and provide an initial reply within 3 days. The one thing, if there's anyone on the call that's sent an email to Verra and has not gotten a reply, I strongly suggested you forward that to either info@verra.org or secretariat@verra.org so that we can facilitate you getting a speedy response to that question. So more longer term, we aim to consolidate more of the inboxes across Verra. So we really streamline and focus the area that we're getting the questions to make sure that we're responding well and responding quickly. Once we accomplish that consolidation, we'll also be able to have a full picture of the themes, the types of questions we're getting, and then that will actually inform our broader communications team to create better materials, better info sheets, more webinars to answer the questions that we're getting most frequently from our stakeholders. So we're at the very early stages of this, but we have a lot of plans and a lot of goals, and I will keep updating you as we progress. So I'll go ahead and end there today, just because I want to give more time for Q&As. So let's officially kick off the Q&A portion. As a reminder, type your questions into the Q&A portal at the bottom of your Zoom console, and we will answer those as we are able. So to kick us off today, I have a question for you, Justin. What is the timeline to expect from registration of a project to issuance of the credits?
Thanks, Hilary. The quick answer, of course, is it depends. The quickest timeline from registration to issuance is if somebody submits a combined request. So you don't have to submit a registration request and then a verification request. You can submit those together if a project is already operating and has achieved some GHG reductions or removals. For those requests, the service level agreement for processing the request is it all adds up to about 55 days of processing time. That's up to, really depends on the quality of the submission, the complexity of the request, and how many times we have to go back and forth. So that doesn't include if we have to issue findings and then get a response back. And then as soon as that request is approved, the project is registered and approved to issue. And it's up to the proponent whether they issue immediately or maybe they have to go and make some sales or something before they want to issue those credits. So you'll see a huge amount of variability. The timeline can be very short, almost instantaneous from the day you see a project as approved and the status changes to registered on the registry and when those first issuances occur. In other cases, it may be a couple of years, depending on the needs of that specific project.
All right. Next question, I believe, is for Naomi. Is there an update on the new APD model for VM48?
Yes, great question. We are actively working on the APD module. It is in the scoping stage at the moment with some key technical questions on how best to approach accounting for that going forward in the context of how we're doing VMD 55, the unplanned deforestation. But we do hope to have a draft of that out for consultation by the middle of this year.
Great. All right, next one is for you, Toby. Can you provide an update on the timeline for VCS standard version 5?
Yes, thanks, Laurie. Great question. So Verra is planning on releasing version 5 of the VCS in Q4, so the last quarter of this year. And we recently published the comment summary from the first version 5 public consultation. So I responded. I'll put the link in the written response if people want to click on that, but that's on our website. And you can see we received almost 2,000 comments from more than 60 individual stakeholders. So a really rich set of inputs that we'll be using to guide the development of version 5. And then we're expecting to do a second consultation in Q2. So later this year, before the summer, that will actually share or put forth the proposed specific language and updates. And then we look forward to getting our stakeholders' feedback on that specific text. And then we can finalize with the plan of getting this launched by the end of the year.
Great. Thank you, Toby. And again, we'll try and make sure to add links to all of your questions as well in the follow-up email, just so you have those for reference. Let's see, Joe, I think this is for you. Will VVBs get access to the project status in the Verra Project Hub so that we can see where contracted projects are in the process?
Yes, thanks, Hillary, for that question, or the audience, actually. So yes, VVBs, so a couple things. Assuming the project proponents grants access to the VVB, they should be able to access the project hub. So if for some reason you don't have access to the project hub, definitely send a note over to hubsupport@verra.org and we'll go ahead and help you out. But yes, otherwise you should have access to the tool and be able to see project related information.
Great. And while you're on the hot seat, I have another question for you. Will there be a separate VVB pipeline for DMRV enabled projects to expedite verification and certification?
So there shouldn't necessarily be a separate VVB pipeline. The goal is that through DMRV, the data comes in via automated fashion. And so the VVB would be part of the verification process through our automated tools. I think we're, still going to be working with Justin from an RBA perspective with DMRV to really evaluate the risk criteria for a particular project and determine to what level of review is required. We're on a number of DMRV working groups, and certainly some of the topics that are coming up are related to the VVB role and how does that verification process work with DMRV. So I'd say stay tuned and more to come on that subject.
Great. All right,
Hillary,
so here's
can I just quickly add on that
go
one?
ahead.
So those DMRV projects where it's fully enabled DMRV and VVB is docked into it, we would generally see those as lower risk review types. So they would be expected to have faster processing times, but it's not a separate pipeline. As Joe said, it would we assess the risk of all project requests as we receive them, and the lower risk projects move through the approval system more quickly.
Thank you, Justin. Here's kind of a long question. See who on our panel can take this one. So regarding the Verra standard, I understood that the durability of carbon removals certified under Verra's VCS is limited to the period of 100 years, and that's the general scope of the standard. Does this limit the methodologies for biochar carbon removal or geological sequestration of biogenic or removed CO2? Can Verra units for 1,000 plus years durability be issued already? Who wants to take this one?
I'm happy to take it. So Verra manages permanence actively through a 100-year time window. So we see that for our broad range of AFLU, agroforestry, and other projects. When it comes to biochar, the risk of reversals beyond that is very low. And because of that, there isn't even a requirement for buffer withholding. So that's actually is considered a medium durable type of unit and credit and emission removal. So can be seen as much longer than 100 years, as you point out, could be 1,000 years plus. And similar for geologic, that is also considered long-term durable or permanently durable. And so the market should perceive and treat those units as such.
Great. All right, a question for you, Justin. Will the VVB performance scorecards for 2024 mentioned earlier be made public?
So initially, no. The detailed scorecards go to the VVBs to provide them feedback so that they can improve their processes. That being said, we will be making some of the aggregate information public. We're still working on exactly what information that is, so that'll be later this year. That will go public. If you have questions for us on exactly what those scorecards are and how it works, feel free to follow up by email. So the core purpose there is to give the VVBs the feedback so they can improve the feedback or improve their performance. Depending on the nature of the feedback, there's also some information that is shared with the accreditation bodies to ensure that they're doing their work in accrediting and maintaining accreditation of those VVBs.
Great, thank you, Justin. A couple more questions might be for you, Toby. They're on timeline updates for methodologies. Do we have a timeline update for the VM 33.21 revision, 2.1 revision, version 2.1 revision, apologies.
Yes, but we would, I think it's better, we can be more precise if we respond directly to that. We're checking with some of the team of more specific dates.
Okay. So we'll get back to you on that question, Ollie. There's another question on update on releasing VM 42 or VM 32 revisions. Same question, same response on that one, Toby?
Yes, I think that's...
Okay. Great. So it looks like we have answered all of the questions that are in the queue. I think Ollie and Kristen, we will get back to you via email post-webinar once we get the exact timelines for you. I would just take, since we have a few more minutes, I would just take this opportunity to, again, repeat the primary emails that you should be emailing if you have any questions or concerns or anything that you would like to raise with Verra. Please make sure that you are emailing to either info@verra.org or secretariat@verra.org. Those inboxes are monitored all day, every day by my team. And again, we are 100% clear on those and getting back to everyone within 3 days. So if you have a new query, if you have a query that hasn't been answered yet, again, please send those to info@verra.org or secretariat@verra.org so that we can facilitate a response to you. So with that, I'll go ahead and end our webinar today. Thank you again for joining us. Again, we will follow this up with a detailed email to all of you with links and resources and everything that was mentioned here. And if you haven't already, you can register for our future stakeholder updates so you don't miss anything from us. Those are available to register at verra.org/events, and they are at the end of April, end of July, and end of October this year. So thank you again, everyone, for your time. Thank you to our panelists for their time. And we hope to hear from you and have a great rest of your day.